I'm back in the fact population table, and here I want to create a new measure now. This new measure should return one single value, so we need an aggregation, as I was just referring to, and this value should be the sum of the female population in the year 2020. So we have different concepts we have to apply right here. We need a filter. We need actually two filters to be more precise right here, the gender filter and the year filter. And we need to calculate the sum of the population column here. Let's get started with the filter first. And as on the slide, I want to use a filter function. For this, we need a new measure again. And let's give this the name of maybe female population. And now we saw that we simply can use this filter function. And this filter function now needs two parameters, two arguments. The first one would be the table. The second one is the filter expression. Well, our table is the fact population table. Therefore, we can simply refer to this table. We have the single quotation marks here now. I'm fine with these at this stage of the project. You know, we can also omit these. And as the second option, we need to tell the filter function now what it should filter for. Well, we are in the fact population table. And in this table, we should filter for our gender, right? And the gender should be equal to female. Therefore, we set it equal to female, but important as a string. So we have to add our quotation marks here because the female column contains strings. Let's close the parentheses at this stage. And the filter is not done. As I said, I also want to filter for the year, but that's the second step. If I would hit enter now, you see that the measure is created right here, but we have this warning, this exclamation mark here. Especially for beginners, we have this a little bit complex looking error message, but in the end, the problem at this stage, when you use filter in combination with a measure, the simple problem is that the aggregation is missing. I explained that on the slide. You create the measure, so you need a single value in the end. At the moment, we are just telling Power BI to filter the fact population table and there in the gender column for the female string. Well, and this doesn't return a single value, right? Therefore, now it's time to add this aggregation, and to do this, we can use our calculate function ahead of the filter. So first calculation, then filtering. So let's add CAL here. Here we have the auto completion, and with tab we can now first add our expression. The expression is our function, so let's say sum in our case, and then the table reference and the column reference. So this means here we enter sum, right? And here for us, the table reference is not required as we are working in the same table. But generally, if you want to refer to other tables, you have to add the table reference too. Therefore, here we can actually simply refer to our population column. That's fine for this example. Now we have to close the parentheses, and now we have to add a comma. And now we can add our first filter. It's the filter function we just created, so this is totally fine. And if we now close the parentheses and press enter again, you see we don't have an error anymore. Let's see if this worked. For this, we go back to our report view. And now I would like to create another visual type. We'll dive into visuals in the next module, as you know. But here, I would like to take this card visual right here, this one, and it only has one field. Therefore, we can use our female population measure and drag it into here, and it then returns one single value, perfectly made for a measure. The problem is that this value is the cumulative value for the female population for all our years. Therefore, we should add the second filter, the year filter, to have slightly better information here. So for that, we go back to the data view. And now you have two options how to add the filter here. One option would be to simply click right here and then add a colon and then use the filter function again and then add the filter which filters for the year 2020. Can do this, but that's not very elegant, right? Because adding 2 times the same function almost, I don't think this looks good, so we won't do this at this stage. A better approach here would be to apply one of the concepts we learned previously. You remember this double ampersand operator? This one right here? Well, this is what we need in here, because with this operator, we can combine multiple filter conditions in a single filter function. In our case, this would mean that we have our table reference already in the filter. Therefore, the second part of this formula now would just be to add the column reference to our year column here, and there I want to filter for the year 2020. Here not formatted as a string because the data in the year column is formatted as numbers, therefore we should also filter for numbers here. Let's see if this worked. If we press enter, takes a few seconds, no error, this is great. So let's go back to the report view. And now you see we have a population of 4 billion people for the female population in the year 2020. So these were the first steps with calculate and filter here. However, if you remember back the slide, I also told you that you can also omit the filter function here. So this function is not required. You can simply add the filtering condition like this one, and like that. So only the actual column and the condition we want to filter for without this function here. I also want to show you this, but I will create a new measure for this purpose. So let's maybe first rename this one to female population filter, right? Because we use the filter function. And now in our table tools, we create another measure, and I call it now simply female population here. And now I will again use our calculate function. The expression is the same one as before, so we want to have the sum of our population here. And now we close the parenthesis and add a comma. And now we can add the first filtering condition. Previously we used the filter function, but now I will simply refer to our gender column here. So we enter gender. Here we have to be very explicit, so we have to include our table reference. And the gender should be equal to female, right? In addition to that, I will add a comma. And now we can add the second filtering condition, and this should be the year. So we go to the table reference and the column reference and say the year should be equal to 2020. If we now close the parenthesis and apply this, we see we don't have an error. And if we now go back to the report view and maybe create a second card, so we unselect the first card visual and now select the card once again down here. And now let's increase the width a bit. Now we use the female population measure we just created and add it right here. And as you can see, we have exactly the same result. And this brings us to a little question at this stage, because if we go back to the data view, you see we have these two measures now, this female population measure not using any filter function and the other one with that filter function. And at this stage, both return exactly the same result. For the moment, both approaches are valid, so you can use either of the two. But once we dive into the report view in the next module, and when we investigate a specific visual named slicer, both work differently. Then it will become evident why you should exactly know which impact the filter has in the calculate function and which impact it doesn't have. At this stage, I want to postpone this because we are not there yet to dive deeper here, but it's important to keep in mind how filter and calculate work, and that you can also use the double ampersand operator to combine different filtering conditions in a single filter function. At this stage, we are almost done with the measure basics though. There are only some minor additions that I would like to make, so let's tackle these in the next lecture.